From the Sky News Centre at 11. The Scottish Labour leader is set to lay a motion of no confidence in the nation's government this afternoon. First Minister Humza Yousaf has cancelled an independence speech as he faces a vote on his leadership. He's facing a backlash after the SNP abandoned a power-sharing agreement with the Scottish Greens. Labour's Jonathan Reynolds thinks it's time for change in Scotland.
It really does take something to make the Conservative government in Westminster look stable and organised, but the SNP have managed to provide that. When I'm in Scotland, and I'm particularly talking to businesses, they desperately want governments working together in a way which is about tackling the real problems people face.
In the past hour, a 13-year-old girl's been placed in youth detention after a court appearance following a stabbing at a school in South Wales. She's facing 3 counts of attempted murder at Ammon Valley Comprehensive in Carmarthenshire. 2 men have been charged with immigration offences after the deaths of 5 people in the English Channel. The 22-year-olds are due in court today. A trial of the first vaccine for melanoma has begun in the UK. The skin cancer treatment uses technology to tell the body to hunt down cells and prevent them from returning. Families of some of the hostages being held by Hamas have gathered in Tel Aviv to thank the leaders of 17 countries who issued a joint statement calling for their immediate release. But Hamas says it won't be influenced by international pressure. Israel's economy minister, Nir Barakat, says they'd be willing to make slight compromises.
We want our hostages back. Every one of them. We don't sleep good at night. All Israelis don't sleep good at night. We're one for all for one. And we care about every one of them. So, of course, we will be able to compromise to a certain degree, but not on the account of finishing the war and wiping Hamas out.
And Madonna has thanked her children for their support after an illness last year. The singer had to pause her tour in 2023 after a serious bacterial infection left her in intensive care. And that's the latest.
TRE, your voice in Spain.
Europe Today is brought to you courtesy of Chase Buchanan, investment and pension specialists. Chase Buchanan, trusted advice made simple.
Europe Today.
I'm asking the British public to take back control.
Finding staff is an absolute nightmare.
We don't need fruit pickers. If fruit can be grown more cheaply and more economically in foreign countries, we should import fruit.
Very hard to actually sell into Europe now.
Stephen Ritson.
I think the people in this country have had enough of experts.
Alternative facts.
Look, alternative facts are not facts. They're falsehoods.
Europe Today.
Buenos dias. Good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 12 on Friday, the 26th of April. Thank you very much to Giles and, of course, to Mr. Grumpy for making me feel relatively better than him every day, every 2 weeks when he's on between 11:30 and 12 here on Talk Radio Europe. Today, you might have missed it, yesterday. Okay. But I have the clip for you. Yesterday was the 20th anniversary of the enlargement of the European Union. And this was the Czech Republic, Estonia, Cyprus, Latvia, Lithuania, Hungary, Malta, Poland, Slovakia, Slovenia. They all joined at the same time 20 years ago, 20 years in a day. Yeah, interesting thing, maybe because it was only 1.8%, wasn't it? 51.8%, the Brexit vote, that it might have swung it had the United Kingdom under Tony Blair, had they approached a different attitude. Remember that, of course, the single market means free movement, the 4 freedoms, free movement of capital, services, goods, and people. To go and work, in another EU country. And many countries, I think it was most countries in the EU, imposed time restrictions on some of those new countries. So as soon as they joined 20 years ago, you couldn't suddenly go from, say, Romania to Spain and work, just as you could say from France or the UK to work. But the UK didn't do that. They just, single market, free movement of people to work from day one. And many people say that didn't really help, in a sense that it's not just that people were spreading around Europe, but if you were, say, for example, Polish, or nothing against the people of those countries, of course, but, Polish, Romanian, Czech, and so on. Well, if you were barred, for a couple of years, however long it took, a sort of transition period, if you were barred from working in, say, France, Spain, Portugal, then you go, well, I might as well go to the UK. So that might have led to a disproportionate amount. Just a thought for you. Ursula von der Leyen, of course, she spoke yesterday, the president of the Commission, on this 20th anniversary. Romano Prodi, former Italian Prime Minister, also former head of the Commission. One thing he said, I won't play his clip because, well, it's in Italian. Numero uno, bellissima, lingua in Spanish, the Italian, lingua. But one thing he did say, he said, one thing I picked up from his speech, if you speak decent Spanish, it's quite easy to understand most Italian. Harder to speak it, I've found. Whenever I've been to Italy, I'll try to sort of speak Italian. I find basically I'm just speaking Spanish with a ridiculous accent and moving my hands around a lot. That's what I do. And I remember once in Venice, I was asking somebody for some directions to the Coop. The Coop. I was staying about 200 meters or something from St. Mark's Square in Old Venice, a lovely apartment that the owner insisted on calling a palazzo. It was, but it was part of a palazzo. And the Coop, to go, to do some shopping. Because being in an apartment, we ate out quite a lot. But we also, ate in, and certainly breakfast and things like that. And the Coop, where's the Coop? It turns out it was the Co-op. Right, the Co-op, the supermarket. Of course, all the stuff came by boat. It was all right. It was quite fun to go to this supermarket next to the canal. But the Coop. But I remember one woman, and I was trying to say, Dove è la Coop? Something like that. And she going, you are English, aren't you? You can speak to me in English. Thank you very much. Prodi, one thing he did say about the European Union that stood out for me, that one of the successes, there are of course issues, but one of the successes of the European Union is the protection of small countries. We saw that with Ireland, with the Republic, vis-a-vis the Brexit debate, when one of the lowest points, there have been a few, but where Priti Patel, when she was Home Secretary, I think, I paraphrase in not so many words, suggested that one tactic that the UK could employ to get the Republic of Ireland to toe the line was essentially to starve them. Kid you not. She didn't put it in those words. You remember? I don't know, to do with the Good Friday Agreement and the border in the Irish Sea and all of that. And essentially said, well, the Republic of Ireland, they import a lot of stuff that comes from the UK or via the UK. Because you'd have, a ship from, France would sail across to Dover and then drive through to Wales, I think up to Anglesey, I think is a typical place, and then would sail across to the Republic from there. So we can make life difficult for them with food. They'll soon toe the line. I mean, obviously completely unaware of the history of the relationship between Ireland and England and food. Obviously, potatoes, number one, very much comes to mind. The starvation, the famine of Ireland. Undoubtedly why I'm English. British, because, half one side of the family, ancestors, I could have been American. I could have been talking with a Southie Boston accent or New York. But, people fled to Liverpool. People fled to America. Typical, hence large Irish expat populations. But, of course, that didn't happen. As we know, we hold all the cards. Remember those debates, pre-Brexit referendum? I think maybe even the Irish were pleasantly surprised just how much the European Union stood up for one of its smaller members. Roughly, 5 million people in the Republic? No. You mess with Ireland, you mess with all of us. That's the approach. And the same with all sorts of countries. When China tried to be tough on Lithuania for mistakenly, clumsily calling the Lithuanian, the what do they call it, the Taipei delegation, because we officially, since Nixon, to get on with China, we don't officially recognize Taiwan, even though we do business with them. So you don't have the Taiwanese embassy anywhere. They call it the delegation of Taipei, as in the capital. And for some reason in Lithuania and Vilnius, they put up like a sign that said the Taiwanese embassy, and China tried to have a go at Lithuania. Lithuania, a small country as well, exports a fair amount for its size to China. Obviously imports a lot, as we all do. And so China was going to block Lithuania. And the European Union said, you mess with Lithuania, you mess with all of us. And so China, what they did is, well, they didn't officially mess with Lithuania. What they did is say goods would arrive, through immigration, customs control goods. And the paperwork was held up. Came from Germany, fine. Came from Spain, fine. Came from Lithuania, oh, okay, no, it needs this bit of bureaucracy, this stamp here, held up in a warehouse for a few weeks or months. The European Union cottoned onto that. We see what you're doing, China. Remember, you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. Anyway, so that was the theme, really, of what Romano Prodi said. And he said it was nice to see. He said that, for what it's worth, he said that the president of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, she is from the biggest country in the European Union. And the president of the Parliament, Roberta Metsola, she's from the smallest country in the European Union. So he pointed out that sort of divergence. You'll hear just 2 minutes. You'll hear Ursula von der Leyen and Pat Cox, himself, Irish, a former president of the European Commission as well. And a word of warning to you in this 2-minute clip. You will hear, hopefully it doesn't disturb too many of you, but this clip ends with 3 cats being tortured. 3 cats being tortured at the end, so beware.
It was not just the birth of a larger union. It was the birth of a new era. It was a night of promise, because Europe is promise. The promise that all Europeans can be masters of their own destiny. The promise of freedom and stability, peace and prosperity. And the 20 years that followed, this promise has been fulfilled. It is right that we look forward to future enlargement as we mark the success of the last 20 years. But at the same time, it is my duty today to pass a very stark message about the future of our union. Because what happens in Ukraine will shape the future of our union forever. We cannot overlook and we cannot overstate that Russia poses an existential threat, not only to Ukraine, but also to Europe.
Madam President, as we acknowledge a successful past enlargement here today, let us remember, as you have done in your speech, all those states now awaiting their hour of European self-expression. The next mandate of both the European Parliament and of the European Commission needs to assist their transitions towards membership and simultaneously to prepare our union's institutional and financial capacity to absorb them.
To share your thoughts with your fellow Talk Radio Europeans on this programme, you can send a WhatsApp message to the following number, +34 603 32 91 20.
I must underscore for Anna in Mallorca, no animals were hurt in the making of that clip. Anna says, by the way, she says, with what's happening at the moment, where's she gone, Anna in Mallorca? Good morning. Do you remember him? Today's situation made me remember this brave man. Have a nice Friday. Thank you. This is, June the 5th it was, 1989. Yeah, the man versus the tank in Tiananmen Square. Remember that, the guy with his shopping bags. Don't think anybody knows really what came of him. By the way, just briefly, they're trying to get these flights off to Rwanda, and maybe they're going to press gang the RAF into doing it. I would imagine, members of the armed forces, they obviously have to abide by stricter rules than civilians, but still human beings that have their own opinions on what's going on in the world and politics and treatment of refugees and the like. But, a lesser ability to disagree with government policy, clearly as members of the armed forces, understandably so, I would say in most cases. Notwithstanding the I was only following orders issue that looms large. But no such qualms. Michael O'Leary, he's great at getting publicity, isn't he? And I'm going to give him some more now. He's defiantly announced he would happily fly asylum seekers to Rwanda under Rishi Sunak's deportation plans. He said the British government hadn't approached Ryanair to ask them to carry out the flights. Well, there you go, Rishi. He's tried with everyone. Even Rwanda said no because of reputational damage. So, ask them. He said, O'Leary said he'd have no qualms about helping the Prime Minister deliver his much criticised public policy, which even this week, the United Nations said it would breach the Refugee Convention. And O'Leary said, if it was the winter schedule and we had spare aircraft sitting around, and if the government were looking for additional deportation flights or any other flights, we would happily quote for the business. Yeah. Now, as I said before, why don't they just do what they've done, they did during the COVID thing, and just one of their mates, like Hancock's friend who's a pub landlord, just set up an airline and then bid for the government business. But I suspect, if O'Leary is successful, the way he'll get round this to avoid reputational damage, he'll do what he usually does. The planes will fly from the UK to Congo, and then there'll be a bus service.
TRE. Funeral Care Spain was established over a decade ago, and with our national partners like Servisa, we help you anywhere in Spain when you need us most. Whether you have a funeral plan or not, we take care of everything, ensuring the quality, dignity and respect that you deserve when the time comes, because it's your right to choose. We are English funeral directors, caring for every family as we would our own. For 24-hour advice and service, call 951-909-264 or visit funeralspain.com. Funeral Care Spain. No worries, just memories.
Abigate, the English insurance broker looking after your health cover needs in Spain. As well as speaking your language, we work with health insurance companies like DKV, Asisa, Liberty, Casa, Helvetia, and many more. This means that at Abigate, we're able to offer the very best cover for you and your loved ones. Get a no-obligation quote today at abigateinsure.com. Call us on 951-277-455. 951-277-455. Abigate, the way insurance should be.
Do you have an Irish pension and would like to discuss favourable tax-efficient drawdown options whilst living overseas? For a free pension review, email Chase Buchanan at tre@chasebuchanan.com. Chase Buchanan. Trusted advice made simple.
Talk Radio Europe.
Stephen Ritson. Europe Today.
Las 12:17, 12:17 here on Talk Radio Europe. Jonathan in Benavista, in Estepona.
Hi, Stephen. I know you like Ursula.
Oh, hang on a minute. Twice the speed. Slow you down. Normal pace.
Hi, Stephen. I know you like Ursula von der Leyen. But what is this rubbish about an existential threat from Europe? Europe has no desire to invade Europe. It's warmongering. There seems to be a taste for a never-ending war in the Ukraine. The Ukraine cannot win this war. The only way it can win is if NATO gets involved, and then we have World War III. So what exactly is going on here? I don't like the way it's heading, that's for sure.
In some ways, I think you're right. Increasingly, the accounts are that some sort of negotiated settlement with basically the current borders frozen. I wouldn't have thought so, but some people are saying that the Donbass area, so Donetsk and Luhansk, that southeast part of Ukraine that Russia pretty much occupies now, that would remain part of Russia, but they would still try and get Crimea back. Sort of less Russian ethnically, linguistically, culturally. I can't see that either, Jonathan. I agree with you. Notably because, well, a couple of things. One, because Sevastopol is, of course, the only warm water Russian naval port on Russian territory. For argument's sake, just for the purposes of this, call it Russian territory that Russia has at the moment. There, of course, Sochi, the sort of tourist resort with a few expensive dashas, oligarchs and politicians and that have, also on the Black Sea, round in what we would call Russia proper. Yep. But there aren't naval ports, as far as I know, no naval port of any significance there. Could be built. If you look, you can see it even on Google Maps. If you look at Sevastopol, it's naturally made to be a good protected from the sea, not from the air, naval port, like Cartagena. Hamburg You know, Hamburg, of course, big naval city-state. Like you've got the Bundeslands, like provinces. It's a bit like, say, Ceuta or Melilla. Hamburg is a city-state in Germany. So it's a region which consists of Greater Hamburg, essentially. One of the most important ports in Germany. And maybe the most important. Yeah, the most, I would say. But if you look, of course, it's way down the river. So it's really protected, you know, from the elements of the sea and sort of attack from, I don't know, gunships from a foreign power off the coast of Germany. Sevastopol, not as much as Hamburg, but it's, you know, it's designed for that. So that's something they wouldn't want to lose. Remember, Ukraine was part of Russia and under, we've had this before, I've forgotten which one now, Khrushchev, Brezhnev, one of those two, I think was, who himself, former Soviet leader, was Ukrainian and made Crimea, the peninsula, it was part of Ukraine rather than Russia, but it didn't really matter so much, seemingly, to the outside world anyway, because it was all part of the Soviet Union, so it was just part of another administrative district. When Ukraine gained its independence after the collapse of the Soviet Union, they kept Crimea, they took it with them. I think it's been Russian since Catherine the Great, seem to remember. So you can argue, just like with the Middle East, is like, well, how far do you go back? Some people say with the Middle East and Palestine, you go back 2,000 years. Others say, well, if you go back 2,000 years, then Rome, not Italy, because it wasn't a country as such, but Rome, the city-state of Rome, could claim 2/3 of Europe or half of Europe, couldn't it? You know. Anyway, to cut it short, well, I suppose one argument is that even if we think, well, what's the point? If that's what we think we're going to end up with some sort of, I don't know, great autonomy, devolved governments, let's say in Crimea and Donbass, but part of the Russian Federation, very devolved, you know, that sort of stuff. But by fighting, it gives Ukraine a better negotiating position. If you sit down at the table, you know, and you're negotiating, saying, if we can reach a deal, we won't, apart from Ukrainians, but we won't kill any more Russians. No more Russians will die if we sit down and we get a deal. If you think, well, they haven't got a hope in hell, they're not in a position to kill any more Russians, then you're not going to give them as much as they want. So there is that, you know, doing this stuff in order to have a stronger position at the negotiating table. It's cold and maybe callous, but yeah, I don't entirely disagree with you. I mean, Joe Biden, there's a thing called the Lincoln Project I mentioned before. They are Republicans, but essentially they're anti-Trump. That's essentially what they're about, despite being Republicans. They want to go back to the Liz Cheney, even George W. Bush and Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld, even that, which seems relatively moderate compared to the MAGA Trump crowd. I know. So they, especially in the run up to the November elections, they put out sort of campaign videos, and essentially there's like, don't vote, or if you're going to vote, swallow your tongue and pride. And for now, until we get what they would call a proper Republican back in contention, then, you know, you're going to have to vote for Joe Biden as the lesser of two evils. And they put this out. It's related to this package just passed in Congress, then by the Senate and signed now, since we learned last night or yesterday, Joe Biden signed it. Of course, that was not in any doubt. So this $95 or so billion, 61 or so billion is for Ukraine. They've already, I think early this morning, time difference, some 9 billion of that already being sort of sent in weapons. Most of that money, bear in mind, so 61 billion for Ukraine, the overwhelming majority of that will be spent in the United States. Yeah, basically the military industrial complex and others, you know, pay them to get those weapons, the American taxpayer, and then you send those weapons to Ukraine. And of the remainder, there's some to do with the Taiwan issue. China's already kicked off about that, you know, because they're not happy. And then the second largest chunk after Ukraine is for Israel. But again, it doesn't mean that all of that money is by any means, a fraction of any, is actually handed over to Israel. It's for the likes of, you know, making weapons in the US with the consequent jobs in the United States, and then giving those weapons to Israel. Plus, part of that money that's officially on paper, shorthand, to Israel, is also to support US operations in the region, in and around the region. So I don't know if, you know, say Qatar, Bahrain, places where the Americans have a significant military presence, whether they've included that. No, this is for, hang on, I mean, you said it's for us, for Israel, but you're giving $1 billion to, the base in Bahrain. Yeah, but that's to protect you in the area. So there is that. But this is what the Lincoln Project put out on this, on Biden. So you can hear, gives you the idea. As I've said, this is who they are, but you can see with the sort of the old melancholic music or, trying to tug at the heartstrings.
I just signed into law the national security package that was passed by the House of Representatives this weekend and by the Senate yesterday. It's going to make America safer. It's going to make the world safer. And it continues America's leadership in the world, and everyone knows it. I want to thank everyone in Congress who made it possible, especially the bipartisan leadership. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, Leader Jeffries, Leaders Schumer and McConnell. They don't always agree, but when it matters most, they stepped up and did the right thing. And I mean this sincerely. History will remember this time. History will remember this moment. At the end of the day, most of us, whether we're Democrats, Republicans, or Independents, believe that America must stand up for what is right. We don't walk away from our allies. We stand with them. We don't let tyrants win. We oppose them. We don't merely watch global events unfold. We shape them. That's what it means to be the indispensable nation. That's what it means to be the world's superpower and the world's leading democracy.
Some have an issue with some would have issue with some of that, but there you go. Just so you know what's being fed in the run up to a campaign. Those sort of thing with the music, the epic what are we doing? Fefeo again now. Epic cinematic music in the background. On the other side, there are quite a few now being inundated slightly with Trump videos. Again, the short TikTok length. Short videos, like under a minute or around a minute, of Trump with this sort of epic music behind, like superhero, in various positions. And as I've said many times on the program, beware in any of the elections, European, British, Indian, whoever else is got Indonesia, largest Muslim country in the world. They've got elections this year as well. The United States. Just watch out for artificial intelligence. Cross-reference anything that you see. I heard him say it. I saw him literally say it with his own lips. You didn't necessarily, as we know. On this issue of the US aid bill and why the delay to this, we know, of course, the MAGA crowd, but Paul Rogers is an international security expert for open democracy.
Within Congress, there were many Republicans who were pretty bitterly opposed to particular parts of it, especially the aid to Ukraine. And there were various devices used to try and delay it and even get rid of it. Ultimately, the Speaker, Mike Johnson, was quite crucial in this, in the way the whole thing was framed. And the Republican leader also sort of tried to set the sides at ease to some extent within the Republican Party, but with some difficulty, and tempers were really raised. One of the reasons it eventually went through was that it's in 4 parts: Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan. And then the fourth was a rather openly worded section, which was really allowing the possibility of banning TikTok, the media sensation, unless the ownership of it came into the United States from China. And that was really a softener for the hard right, if you like. But the point is that all 4 of those different scopes were put into a single motion. So essentially it was a kind of take it or leave it. And even if some of the members of Congress bitterly opposed some bits, other bits they were quite happy with. So this is the consequence of how it got through. Interestingly, once it got through, its passing through the Senate was extraordinary. It was a vote of 79 to 18. So sort of 4-1 pass. And incidentally, there were 3 members of Senate, Liberals, who were actually opposed to it, including Bernie Sanders. And that was on the grounds of the support for Israel, that they feel is actually wrong because of the huge loss of life that's being incurred in the Israeli involvement in Gaza. So it's a complicated story, but it cut through a combination of sort of rather crude politics, but it took 6 months to do it. In terms of the proportions, of the 95 billion, in rounded terms, Ukraine has 61 billion, Israel has 26 and a bit billion, and Taiwan and sort of Southeast Asia, West Pacific has 26 billion. So Ukraine is overwhelmingly the largest bit, essentially about 2/3. Interestingly, most of the aid going to Ukraine and Israel, in other words, most of all of it, is actually going to be spent internally in the United States. So in other words, it will be used to buy arms to send to these countries. And in fact, one leading senator, Mark Wayne Mullen of Oklahoma, actually made this point, and it's one of the reasons why he was prepared to accept it, because much of the money doesn't even leave the country, although, of course, the equipment does. But essentially, Ukraine gets this. The opposition to Ukraine getting the money comes mainly from right-wing Republicans, particularly in Congress, who basically think this is an unwinnable war. There has to be a settlement. Many of them sort of took the Trump line of being sort of quite rather closer in some ways to the Russian side. And they were really of a mind to oppose it right the way through. But they were in a sufficiently small minority not to count. So Ukraine, it's mostly weapons, particularly anti-aircraft weapons, but also some modern systems as well for sort of ground-to-ground fighting. The attack is an important weapon. It's an area impact weapon. In other words, it can kill people and damage so-called soft targets over wide areas. And its range is much longer than the current system they have. I think it's about 3 times as long. But it is an accurate system. I doubt it'll be a game changer. We've heard so many game changer reports over the last 2 years. But the reality is it pushes things a little bit on the Ukrainian side, particularly if they're trying to lay into targets in, well, say the eastern part of Ukraine bordering on Russia, which Russia controls, and in Crimea. But the problem still remains with Ukraine. This is a war which neither side can win, but neither side will lose. And at some stage, it has to end in negotiated settlements. And to that extent, quite a lot of people privately will agree with those Republican right-wingers. They may be pro-Moscow in some ways, following the Trump line, but the war does have to come to an end through negotiation. And in some ways, this may produce a kind of balance, which means that negotiations can happen. But that's a very positive way of looking at it, I have to say.
Paul Rogers from Open Democracy there. On just generally to end on this for now, on in Europe, all linked to sort of European defence spending, upping our game, basically learning the lesson. Woo! Once bitten, twice shy. And addressing the Atlantic Brücke Group. Brücke means bridge in German, so the Atlantic Bridge Group. Atlantic Brücke Group in Berlin last night. The NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said Europe has not been meeting its own target in terms of providing support for Ukraine. He said in Europe, the delivery of ammunition is far below the levels we said we would provide. And stepping up the criticism of NATO countries, the UK is fine, even though both Labour and the Tories are talking about increasing it to 2.5%. I said a 2.5% increase yesterday. Somebody pointed out it was a slip of the tongue. I meant to 2.5% of GDP. I think most of you knew that. It's okay. Greece and particularly the eastern countries, Poland and the Baltics are, above the typical, but Germany heading that way, but not. Spain, not, and so on. He said in recent months, NATO allies have not provided the support we'd promised. He added that this $60.8 billion US aid package came late, leaving Ukraine outgunned. And he told his German audience to stop relying on Chinese money. This is just after a week after the German Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, led a strong business delegation to meet the leader Xi Jinping. Stoltenberg said in the past, we made the mistake of becoming dependent on Russian oil and gas. We must not repeat that mistake with China, depending on its money, its raw materials, and its technologies. Echoing what Ursula von der Leyen and others have said in the European Union. This is NATO, of course, but in the EU, the same sort of thing. What was the phrase she comes up with? De-risk, but not decouple. Let's continue to do trade with China, plenty of it, but let's de-risk. Let's take out the risk factor. It could be weaponry. It could be raw materials, things that we need for our chips. And, and even, medicines, components of medicines. There are many medicines that are made in Europe, but they consist of, let's say, 5 ingredients. And say if those ingredients, they come from China raw and they're put together as a drug in Europe, let's de-risk so we don't have to rely on them. Food, we've done that. Right from the beginning, the Common Agricultural Policy, predating Maastricht. We don't want to have the risk of famine in Europe. So it's basically the same sort of thing. We've done it with food. I know food prices going up, but that's the thing. The rest of the world can't cut off our food supply because we produce enough of our own in totality. Might not be distributed well enough. There's all of that, but we produce enough of our own. So it's the same concept. It's been done. It's practical. I think it's a good thing, and it's not a pro or anti-EU thing. The UK could do the same thing. Jacob Rees-Mogg, infamously, of course, as you know, said, "Well, why bother? Making apples and growing apples and berries and things, fruit." He said specifically in the UK when it's cheaper to buy from abroad. Security, Jacob, taking back control, wasn't that what it was all about? And highlights, Stoltenberg was highlighting China's aid to Russia, such as high-end technology like semiconductors, dual-use items, so stuff that ostensibly is not for the war but can be used for the war, as well as microelectronics, which Stoltenberg said are used to produce missiles, tanks and aircraft. He said Beijing is also working to provide Russia with improved satellite capabilities and imagery. All of this helps Moscow to inflict more death and destruction on Ukraine, end quote. Now, just linked to this, Sweden said Sweden's going to send a reduced mechanized battalion of soldiers and officers to NATO's forces in Riga early next year. And Stockholm announced that yesterday, and those are going to be part of a multinational NATO force led by Canada. And that battalion will include 90 combat vehicles, 122 Leopard tanks, and 360 armored all-terrain vehicles. So that ostensibly is not for Ukraine. That's ostensibly to protect the Baltics. Yeah. I mean, for those of you, I think Vladimir Putin was a very naughty man to do what he did in Ukraine. You think you know that. But for those, conversely, those people who say, well, it's Ukraine now and then next it'll be NATO. I never know, be proved wrong in a bad way, but I can't see that. I can't see Russia attacking a NATO country precisely because of Article 5, an attack on one's an attack on all. It'd be a real test. We'd have to live up to the test. I think it's an absurd scenario. Absurd. Just improbable to the point of absurdity, perhaps. But if, just for argument's sake, if Russia were to attack, say, one of the Baltics, right, in NATO, then if we didn't invoke Article 5, then basically that's the end of NATO. The points, obviously there are 4 preceding articles and the subsequent ones, but Article 5 is what it's all about. So if we didn't defend a NATO ally invaded, then we might as well pack up and go home. So we'd have to. I think, if they talk about, he's been chipping away at it anyway, but say Georgia, yeah, Moldova, yeah, there are possibilities after Ukraine. But the others, I can't see it myself. A conspiracy theory is an explanation for an event or situation that asserts the existence of a conspiracy by powerful and sinister groups when other explanations are more probable.
Stephen Ritson.
The stronger the evidence against a conspiracy, the more the conspirators must want people to believe their version of events. As a consequence, the conspiracy becomes a matter of faith rather than something that can be proven or disproven.
Europe Today.
Weekdays from midday.
Is the economy doing well? Economists say it is. Oh yeah, because they're in it. They're in on the conspiracy.
Europe Today is brought to you courtesy of Chase Buchanan, investment and pension specialists. Chase Buchanan, trusted advice made simple.
Thank you for listening to Talk Radio Europe.
Do you remember the good old days?
Oh, well, in spam meant spam?
Yes, and an application was for employment.
Yes, and the web was a spider's home?
Yes, and memory was something you lost with age.
No, I don't remember that. Linea Directa offers car, bike and home insurance with 24/7 assistance.
Maybe that's why 9 out of 10 customers recommend us.
Call Linea Directa today on 919-181-130. That's 919-181-130. And ask about our great value insurance policies. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey, listen up. Are you British? Tell me something. Are you registered on the town census? If not, did you know that the more people who register, the more resources we receive? More security, cleaner streets, discounts, decision power, better health centres and schools. Come on, level up. Register on the Padron and enjoy Malaga to the full. Visit levelupmalaga.es or go to your local town hall. This is a message from the Diputación de Málaga.
Hi, my name is Sam Mark, and together with my brother Simon Mark, we are the Mark brothers at Aura Dental Clinic. If you have any dental problems or wish to improve your smile with crowns, veneers, or implants, please contact us through auradental.com, which is AAURA dental.com. You are welcome to any of our clinics in Fuengirola, Estepona, and Nueva Andalusia. Thank you.
Tune in to the Aura Dental On-Air Clinic on The Lifestyle Show. Sam Mark joins Selena Mackenzie on the second Thursday of every month at 2:15.
Autos Dominguez is the second-hand car dealership of choice in Malaga. Our constant dedication to the satisfaction of our customers and the strict process of selecting our stock makes us the most reputed nearly new car dealership in Malaga. All cars are certified and guaranteed at the very best price. Check out our stock online, and if you live in the province of Malaga, you can even test drive a car at home. We will deliver to your door. Whether you're looking for your first set of wheels or an exclusive high-end model, whether buying or selling, first make sure you check out Autos-Dominguez.com. Telephone 952 363 177.
Tune in to GB Not GQ on a Friday to hear about the Autos Dominguez Car of the Week, or check it out on the TRE Facebook page.
TRE. Europe Today is brought to you courtesy of Chase Buchanan, investment and pension specialists. Chase Buchanan, trusted advice made simple.
Stephen Ritson, Europe Today.
12:40, 12h40, las 12:40. Now, elections coming up all over the shop, as we know. The 9th of June, European elections in Spain. Before that, you've got the Catalan elections, of course, the regional elections up there. On the Pedro Sánchez issue. I'm sorry, I've just got some issue here. 1 second.
TRE, your voice in Spain.
Do you remember the good old days?
Aye, when TikTok was just the sound a clock made.
Yes, and Sunday afternoon meant washing the car.
And a firewall helped stop fires.
Yes, and when the car never had any problems.
No, I don't remember that. Línea Directa offers car insurance with 24/7 assistance.
Maybe that's why 9 out of 10 customers recommend us.
Call Línea Directa today on 919-181-130 and get 2 months free car insurance. Terms and conditions apply.
Unblock UK television from Spain. Stream VPN provides fast access to all your favourite UK TV channels. BBC, ITV, Channel 4 and 5 from just £4 a month. Use our app on your iPad, tablet or Fire Stick to watch UK TV online now. StreamVPN.com, dedicated to streaming.
Healy's Irish Bar has become the emerald jewel of Estepona. We pride ourselves in capturing the essence of an authentic Irish atmosphere. We offer a selection of local and selected beers from around the world, live sports on multiple screens, and amazing views from our elevated position in Estepona Port. Come visit Healy's Irish Bar to experience true Irish hospitality.
TRE, Talk Radio Europe.
Europe Today.
12:43. At least we've got another break under our belt. Pedro Sánchez, the Spanish Prime Minister, who is sort of a bombshell, unexpected letter that he posted on Twitter. Apparently, even his people weren't told about it. People in the Socialist Party and grouping and allies and the rest. And he said that because of the attacks on his wife, that he was going to make an announcement on Monday, this coming Monday, on whether, what to do with his future career, whether he'd step down or not. There's this weekend, Calle Ferraz. Ferraz in Madrid is a street, and that's the headquarters of the Socialist Party. When you hear people say en Ferraz, they mean the street, the headquarters. Like Genoa, Calle Genoa, that's the headquarters of the PP. So when people say, en Genova han dicho esto, in Genoa they said this, they don't mean this northwestern Italian city, they mean the street. And they've hired coaches to take loads of PSOE sympathizers to Madrid, so you expect some sort of big rally there. There have already been some sort of demos on the streets in favor of him, and they've been chanting, no pasarán, that Republican chant from up to the Spanish Civil War. No pasarán, they will not pass. The PP and others on the right, and even some of the Catalan separatists, have been scathing, saying, well, tell us now what it is. And I have to say, there's a lot of sympathy. They're saying he's just getting it for the sympathy vote, or that he's been so terrible that, on Monday, if he resigns, it'll be, well, I resigned for personal reasons, matters of the heart, rather than getting things, being politically inept or worse. That's the argument from his detractors, of course. The little sort of left and far left parties that are supporting and propping up the government with legislation, certainly in Parliament, they've all come out and said they support him. You could be cynical or realistic and say, well, they would, because if he goes and the PSOE government collapses, then the little power they have in the power sharing thing, or even if they're just lending their votes in Parliament, that leverage goes. With the PSOE gone, if it is, him leaving wouldn't mean the PSOE would go, but some people are surprised because he's still got another 3 years, barring some upset, still sort of 3 years or so in as Prime Minister, so to do this now. But, they're saying it's all tactical stuff to help, the elections in Catalonia and the sympathy vote for the European elections. I would say that my biggest issue with what he's done, just looking at it from very much outside, is the markets. One thing the markets like is certainty, right? To anything. Why didn't the price of oil go up suddenly after, Iran launched hundreds of missiles and drones at Israel? Because they'd already factored it in. When there was that attack on the Iranian consulate in Damascus, the markets thought, right, Israel's going to react. We don't know exactly what. They probably won't nuke Iran, but they'll probably respond in some kind. So there's a little bit of movement on the markets, the oil market particularly, because of, the safe passage issue in the Persian Gulf, notably. And that was it. So when Iran did retaliate, as expected, and then Israel did a little, the pot shot back in Isfahan, the markets hardly moved. And like, why? Well, because we already factored it in. When Sanchez is saying, well, I don't know, we'll have to wait and see, on Monday, the markets can't really factor that in. So that would be my criticism, number one, of what Sanchez has done, is leading to uncertainty. These things matter. Is it, to take it to the extreme, it's like companies go, well, I'm not going to invest in Spain until Tuesday. No investment. We have no idea what's going to happen. New government might mean different tax policies, different regulations that affect my industry and so on. So that would be my particular issue with him. But anyway, to the crux of the matter, Spanish prosecutors yesterday argued in favor of dismissing the criminal complaint filed against Begoña Gómez. Normally, the prosecutor wants to bring a case, Fiscal del Estado, the Attorney General, whether it's federal or of New York State or so, say in the United States. But in this case, it's a judge has agreed to open the case, and the fiscal, the prosecutor, state prosecutor, said, well, we're not looking to prosecute Begoña Gómez, the wife of Pedro Sánchez. Remember, I told you yesterday that private citizens or organizations can urge criminal proceedings, urge a judge to look into criminal proceedings, even if they're not remotely affected directly by the case. And the country's public ministry considers there's no evidence that would justify the influence peddling and corruption probe. Now, this preliminary investigation into Sanchez's wife, so it's not no charges, it's a preliminary investigation. It was launched following the filing of a lawsuit against Begoña Gómez by Manos Limpias, a pseudo trade union that regularly files lawsuits to target progressive causes. And the group's founder yesterday admitted that the complaint he filed may have been based on fake news. Right? Bulos. A bulo, B-U-L-O, Spanish word, un bulo. It's a good word to know. You'll hear it a lot. Let me just see what the official translation in English is. I might as well get this right. Bulo. German? No. Spanish. Bulo, B-U-L-O. Hoax. Yeah, hoax, a hoax, un bulo. Sometimes in the context, probably fake news would be more appropriate than a hoax. It's a hoax, but a hoax, because a hoax would imply sort of, more of a jokey thing. But maybe the damage is done. it seems that some of his team, because he hasn't spoken publicly, he didn't say this, he didn't give a speech saying that he's not doing any, cancelled all public engagements until Monday. It was just this tweet, this X, 3 pages and a bit, written by him. And, it seems that people around him are saying that, they're saying he's had enough, of this, and something needs to be done about this in poisoning Spanish politics, because it's constant and relentless, and they've been going after, in social media and so on, attacking groups linked to the likes of Manos Limpias and Vox and so on. This is the allegation that they've been going around on Facebook and Twitter and TikTok and Instagram and all of that, attacking his wife. I know his children, because they're sort of I don't know how old they are now, if they're overage or underage. But anyway, they're not little children. They'll be fully aware of all of this. His brother, his parents, basically all the family. And he says the only reason that they're going after Begoña Gomez, it's nothing to do with her, nothing she's done or hasn't done. And saying, even the prosecutor's saying, there's nothing to see here. Even the Manos Limpias guy said, well, it could have been fake news, that we just brought it to the judge's attention. But the only reason they're going for my family is because they're my family. Nothing to do with anything substantive in these claims. And this bombshell letter didn't just shock average citizens. His own team, it seems, is completely caught off guard. He was thinking of stepping down. According to officials within the government, he wrote the letter himself. He didn't share it or his intention to tweet it with anyone, not even his inner circle. And his team said, rather than some sort of cynical stunt, I don't know. Since I'm pleased to defend people if, it's 50-50. But he is the Prime Minister. This is quite important, significant. As I say, the markets, if nothing else. All the people in his teams are going to have a job as Under Secretary of State for this, that and the other next Tuesday. Is it a sensible thing to do? Even if his family's been attacked. And they said that his team said that the way the letter was written and shared showed that Sanchez is speaking from the heart, and he took a decision based on his personal feelings, not political decisions. So obviously, as I mentioned yesterday, feverish speculation in Brussels. Does he want that job of head of the European Council? It could prove a deft exit from the fractured and toxic political scene. His domestic public image has never been great, but, it's pretty good in Europe. So that remains to be seen. And somebody said to, Fabian Picardo, the First Minister of Gibraltar, Chief Minister, said he's tweeted, "Politics is a contest of ideas, not a litany of insults, abuse and attacks on family. I have sued Manos Limpias and Miguel Bernal and won for similar defamations. Hashtag Pedro Sanchez at Sanchez Castejon. Good for him," says the Gibraltar, the head of the Gibraltar government, the Chief Minister. And somebody said to me, Picardo has an agenda by supporting Sanchez. He believes he'll get closer to a deal with him than a replacement PP government. I think that's probably true, but I reminded this person that in the run-up to the Brexit referendum, the attitude of José Manuel García Margallo, who was then the PP's Spanish foreign minister, would corroborate that assessment. I've said in the past, it might have been slightly exaggeration or got it slightly wrong, that he'd said, maybe he did, why would it be in my head, that he said something that if the UK voted for Brexit, he'd rush across the Bay of Algeciras himself personally with a chain and padlock and lock and seal the border between Spain and Gibraltar, something like that. I was having a look as a result of that. I was just having a look at this morning of actually a couple of things that Margallo said, José Manuel García Margallo from the then centre-right government of the PP, and stuff that obviously Gibraltarians from Fabian Picardo down could not possibly tolerate. But just reading a little bit, he's not quite as off his rocker and sort of nationalist Spanish, arriba España, abajo Gibraltar Español. There's a little more nuance to it. If I have time before the news, I'll tell you.
TRE, Talk Radio Europe.
Hi there. How are you doing? No, really.
I want to know how you're honestly feeling. Feelings are so important, but sometimes we simply ignore them. That is, until we can't pretend anymore. Please note, you do not have to suffer in silence. If you are feeling desperate, anxious, or alone, Samaritans in Spain are just a free phone call away on 900 525 100. Between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m., one of our trained listeners will be waiting to take your call in complete confidence. You do not need to be feeling suicidal. If you just want to talk to someone, then call 900 525 100. Together, we are stronger.
To learn more about the benefits of promoting your business on Talk Radio Europe, the largest English language station serving Spain, Gibraltar and the Balearic Islands, please email
sales@tre.radio
or call the office now on 952 799 953.
Talk Radio Europe.
You're listening to Europe Today, presented by Stephen Ritson and brought to you by Chase Buchanan. Chase Buchanan. Trusted advice made simple.
Stephen Ritson.
Europe Today.
12:55, las 12:55. Rafa in Marbella says, you might also talk about Spain's far-right judges. Well, I'm not on top of the detail there, but the Consejo General del Poder Judicial, so the General Council of the Judiciary, which oversees the judiciary in Spain, they're sort of caretakers at the moment, and you need cross-party consensus in order to have the new board, basically, that oversees the courts, the judiciary in Spain. And the PP and the PSOE are not seeing eye to eye on this. The PSOE thinks that the PP wants to stuff it with conservative judges, and the PP thinks that the socialists want to stuff it with left-wing judges. That's in simple terms where we're at. It's the European Commission is taking a keen interest in this and is wagging its finger. Maybe have a look at that. That's the summary of what's going on. It's been going for a few years now. We still haven't sorted it. Maybe another day on that. But yeah, I mentioned Margallo, former conservative, José Manuel García Margallo, former conservative Spanish foreign minister. Yeah, he said, I've got a piece from 2016. This is, around the time of the referendum, Brexit referendum. He said, the Spanish flag will fly in Gibraltar sooner than the chief minister thinks. I'm singing this in Spanish. Miércoles. He said, convinced this Wednesday that the authorities in Gibraltar will start from March of next year to negotiate a co-sovereignty agreement proposed by Spain once the United Kingdom has left the European Union, or that's been notified. So basically it's saying once the UK, that's right, it was October, after the referendum, before Article 50 had been triggered, which then started the 2-year period to exit, he said, once they trigger Article 50, essentially what he meant, then the UK will or the Gibraltar authorities will negotiate with Spain for co-sovereignty. The head of Spanish diplomacy was answering a definite negative, and sort of a refusal to negotiate, expressed by the Chief Minister of Gibraltar, Fabian Picardo, during the 4th Commission of the General Assembly of the United Nations, dedicated to the subject of decolonization, and in which Picardo assured that Spain would never be in the the Peñón, the rock, would never be in the hands of Spain. Picardo said in this quote, "De ninguna manera, José. In no way, José," reference to García Margallo. He said, "Jamás pondrá la mano en el Peñón." He'll never put his hand on the rock. I guess, I've got the article in Spanish. I suppose he said it in English. And now the government and the Junta de Andalucía, it's PP-led now, so centre-right, but it was PSOE. It's mostly been PSOE, Andalucía, so the left. And of course then the conservative government in Madrid, so opposing sides, Andalucía and Madrid then. But even Margallo said they would have to negotiate with the Junta because, of course, Andalucía, for geographical and employment reasons, is the most directly affected by the status of Gibraltar. And he said, if Gibraltar doesn't accept co-sovereignty, they'll do mal negocio, bad business. He said, he was talking to 24-hour news on RTV, Spanish news channel. He said, la mano no, pondré la bandera y mucho antes de lo que Picardo cree. He said, I won't just put my hand on Gibraltar, I'll put the flag and a lot more, far sooner than Picardo thinks. I've got another couple of quotes. I think it's interesting, but we're out of time here. You know me and timing. But I at least not premise. I'll tell you after the news, okay, just a final thing of what he said. It's not entirely unreasonable. I perfectly understand, and rightly so, that Picardo rejected that. It's not what the people of Gibraltar want, but I'll let you know what he said in 5 minutes. We're off to Londinium, then Lucentum, the Roman word for Alicante, back in 5.
Online, on mobile, on the TRE app, your smart speaker and on air. This is TRE, Talk Radio Europe, your voice in Spain and around the world.
From the Sky News Centre at midday, Scottish